Hello everyone, this is Warren. I'm here with John. This is the second episode of TekWars 2.0. We have a really special guest on today. He goes by the name Weev. You may have heard of him. And I want to, before we bring Weev on, address a few things I've been seeing around, things concerning the past co-host, and I just want to quickly use 2 minutes to clear up all that happened, or not all that happened, because that's all too much, but I want to talk about the matter of the fact that it was a pretty mutual decision to split, and it wasn't anything other than him, I guess, having me get on his nerves through my traveling, and traveling during the pandemic. Things that he said were pretty rough, and I guess I shouldn't have been traveling during the pandemic, but I don't know why that would bring TekWars to its demise. So what really happened was he found a guy in New York that had some audio gear. So I was the audio guy originally, but ever since he found this new audio gear, he simply told me he wants to do his own show in his own way, and just kind of move things forward, move on, take it up to the next level. So there's no like crazy conspiracies here as to why this split happened. He simply wanted to do his own show, and I think it's called Pseudodoxology Fan Network or something like that. But yeah, I mean, it's not that big of a deal. He won't be on TekWars 2.0 through our mutual decisions. And so if you don't like that, you can unsubscribe. But I think that the shows will be going in different directions. Our show will be certainly in a different direction than they have been in the past. And I think that's for the better for us. It's more comfortable for me and John to kind of talk about the things that we like to talk about. And yeah, I think it's going to be a good thing. So there's no need to be berating about what happened. Everything is fine. He's on Patreon now. You guys all know the problems we've had with Gumroad. So yeah, now a lot of people are moving to Patreon, and he just wanted to start his own show, just him, no co-host. So that's really the fact of the matter. So I see the threads on Poll and 4chan and all that, and yeah, there's really no crazy conspiracies or anything. It was just a mutual split on going separate ways and him starting his own show. But that's enough of that. That's the last I'll talk about it, and I just wanted to clear things up, and when we return from the break, we'll have our guest Weev on. everyone. We're here with Weev and my co-host John. Weev, thanks so much for coming on TekWars 2.0. I'm really happy to have you here.
Glad to be here.
How was your did you celebrate Easter yesterday? How was your Easter?
No, it's Orthodox here, so we don't have it
Oh,
till
you
the
don't.
19th.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It's, uh, it's a
John,
different date.
did you celebrate unorthodox Easter?
Kind of. So I forgot about Good Friday, and I was eating meat.
How dare
Uh,
you?
I know, but well, I forgot, so I kind of compensated a little bit and didn't eat meat yesterday, but just to make myself feel better. But yeah, apparently Good Friday, the tradition of not eating meat is like this is what I've heard. I'm probably wrong, but apparently it's only an Italian thing. It's not even like a Catholic thing, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean the old Lenten traditions were one of extensive fasting. It was originally supposed to be like um, 6 days of fasting, and then you could eat again on Sunday, and it
Wow.
slowly slid into, well, let's just not eat meat on Good Friday.
Yeah,
We're
it's a
fucking
lot
hungry.
easier.
We'll just cut out
Yeah.
meat.
Yeah. Yeah, so I used to fast extensively for Lent. I'm not so much a super Christian anymore, so I just I don't bother. I don't
You
bother, but
were, I'm sorry, what were you saying?
it's good to fast though. It's good for your mental health.
Yeah.
It increases the concentration of fats in your brain. It raises your IQ, and ketosis in general will just kind of make you more able to think lucidly, I think.
Are you keto? Are you on a
Not
keto
all the
diet?
time. I'm cyclical keto, so I do about 4 or 5 days at a time on keto, and then 2 days not keto.
Oh, interesting. Do you notice any clarity? Does it make you more able to think? Is
Oh yeah,
ketosis the way
oh
to
yeah.
go?
Oh, yep, absolutely. I'm a huge advocate of like paleo and keto. Like you should eat as much meat as possible. You should definitely avoid like all grains. Like wheat is a food for slaves. It's something that you put in a silo and you stack it into a silo and then you feed it to your plebs over time, and just dole it out and they make bread over it, and it makes you sluggish and stupid, grains in general. Um,
What was
you
the
should have a fat
Roman
heavy diet, and ideally.
the Romans they gave out bread to the plebs, right? Wasn't that a Caesar thing to give out bread and circus to the plebeians? Keep
Yeah,
them.
I'm not quite sure. It just kind of makes sense if so. I mean, it's just cheap garbage food that like has negative mental health effects, and the gluten, there's proteins, uh they're called exorphins, gluten exorphins, and they actually mimic opiates inside your body, and it's really bad, right? It's like that's why you feel good when you eat bread. It
Hmm.
creates this kind of fuzzy, warm feeling because you're basically getting doped up, and it's just bad for you. It's we haven't adjusted on the evolutionary time scale to be able to eat bread. It's like a new invention basically. So it's not good for you. It's not good to eat anything that your ancestors didn't eat for the majority of the evolutionary time scale.
That's a pretty good point. I would subscribe to that. That sounds like a yeah. That if your ancestors didn't eat it, then you probably shouldn't be because the evolutionary timescales, as you said, not caught up. So Monsanto can get fucked. But
Yeah, but you're gonna eat the bugs.
yeah,
That's what you're gonna do.
We're all
You
gonna
gotta
be
eat the bugs.
we're all gonna be good slaves to the technocrats and eat our bugs and get microchipped, aren't we?
Yep, yeah, that's the way to go. Be a machine man.
But I'm so glad you're here on this podcast. We're very happy to have you. I think you're most well known for two things, I guess, would be first GoatSec and then your AT&T quote unquote hack, which was, I guess you can expand upon, but was just exploiting arithmetic. Do you care to talk a bit about, to fill in the audience that might not know about this old revelation that they should know about, to fill them in on what this whole debacle was, because I feel like this took up a big part of your life.
Yeah, I guess this was 2010, June of 2010. There was a public AT&T web server, and that web server had a URL on it, like you'd type into your web browser, and there's an integer at the end of the URL. Just increment this integer, and you see like the next customer record, the one after yours in their database. And so I incremented this integer a bunch, and then I sent a sample this data to a journalist. And the next thing I know, like there's feds kicking in my door, right? Like they're carting me off the next year. After that, in early 2011, they cart me off to New Jersey. I'd never been to New Jersey, and I waited a couple years for my show trial. Then I went to prison. All in all, I did 15 months, counting extradition, for accessing a public web server and adding one to a number. It figures that America would outlaw mathematics first, I think. That just makes innate sense.
That's so outrageous to me, because that seems like that would fall on AT&T's half, that should be getting the kind of slap on the wrist for leaving their arithmetic errors to the public to be exploited.
I want to say first, it wasn't AT&T's fault. The device that I queried was actually designed and built by Apple. And regardless, AT&T was kind of a victim of this too. They didn't want me prosecuted. They tried to stop my prosecution because they thought it was just a PR liability for them. Like, why do we need this coming up over and over again, was their thing. Like, right. A, it's embarrassing for us. B, it wasn't our fault. C, like, we have nothing to gain from this. D, it's like there was a guy from AT&T at the trial, the lead investigator for this thing, and he said, quote, no security was bypassed. I don't think they have a case. And they was, of course, in reference to the FBI. So AT&T, it wasn't at fault here. Like, it wasn't their deal, right? They didn't do any of this. They don't know any of this. They don't care. And they thought.
Oh, hold on. You broke up a moment there. So it wasn't the FBI. Sorry, you had an internet lag. But what were you saying? The AT&T obviously didn't want this PR scandal to keep getting brought up, but the FBI wanted to.
Yeah. Yeah, the FBI wanted to prosecute me. It was solely pushed by the federal government. AT&T wanted nothing to do with it. It was bad for them from a PR standpoint. It took, valuable time out of their high-level employees and executives to be called to grand juries, gather evidence for the thing. They didn't want to deal with it. They didn't want me prosecuted. They actually tried to stop the prosecution repeatedly, and the federal government was like, no, we're going after this guy. So it doesn't really have anything to do with AT&T other than the fact that, they were the alleged victim in the case, not really. So yeah, it's just, this is what the federal government does. It's a giant machine that attacks dissidents and attempts to throw them in prison or kill them.
So why were you a dissident back then? What is it that you were doing that the feds wanted you away for so badly?
Oh, well, I made it's kind of Encyclopedia Dramatica thing. I was, kind of a very large shaper of culture on 4chan and other, places. And, I've just been on FNet forever, and I've kind of pushed ideas. I mean, we're not going to
Right.
get onto them because I don't want you to get banned from
Yeah.
whatever you're using. I'm not going to enumerate my political standpoints. There's
But it
some
was
things
that
that are better left
stuff.
said. Yeah, I'm sure you can imagine, right? There's a very limited amount of content that you're just not allowed to say anywhere, And it's like there's a quote. It's misattributed to Voltaire, but it's a good quote. It's to find out who rules you, you find the people that you cannot criticize.
Oh, I think that's a good one. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, we're on Gumroad right now, so we might have to keep it cool there. But so
Yeah.
I guess that goes to a platform that some people might be working on. Hopefully that'll come to fruition and break the cuffs off of all of us. But so you were in Newark for federal prison. You were in.
I was in federal prison in Newark. I was in holding in Newark. It was it was an interesting experience. I was temporarily in Newark. I bailed out in New Jersey, but they didn't allow me to go back home in Arkansas. But I was in the Green Monster, which is kind of a notorious holding facility. Like there's a federal holding pod at it. But it's the Newark jail, and I meet like the guy that's like the shot caller for the Newark Bloods, and I start talking to him about some of these people you're not allowed to criticize, And he asked me if they killed Michael Jackson, and I said absolutely. There's that song, "They Don't Really Care About Us," And
Yes.
he released this song, and if you go back and you look at the original lyrics, he actually names these people in it, and uses unfriendly words, to describe them. And he got a lot of flack for that song. And after he released that song, then these accusations of child molestation, all this stuff come against him. And so he got addicted to drugs just to deal with the sadness and pain, And then they gave him a shady doctor, right? All because he started to get too politically minded, right? And he went after the wrong people in this kind of political action. And so they kind of like pushed him towards death. They just had to rule him by his passions. They always have this method of controlling people, ever since the 18th century, really. There were people that went around and they decided to conspire to come up with a system of control that was based around the idea that you have this yoke around people based off of their vices, in combination with a gigantic panopticon of informants and confessors.
Yeah, that's intense. I guess we can get into I do want to get into the 18th century topics of philosophy, and I know you wanted to talk about the truths of German idealism, but first I think John had a couple things about. I think we'll take it one bit at a time and slowly mesh into things. John, what were you going to say?
Well, I was just going to say, it's a little off topic, but it was on topic earlier. But I was just going to say I'm from New Jersey, so I've heard about the Green Monster. And I heard a couple years ago it actually shut down because there were so many suicides because it was like so dirty and unsanitary. Like, do you know anything about that?
I mean, I couldn't. It was almost like a dream. And I was going around so many prisons that like they all kind of smelled bad, and you don't really have a concept of like everything has smelled like shit for such a long time.
Yeah.
I imagine if the Green Monster were the first prison I went to, like my friend who bailed me out said it was like vomitously sick just like walking in like the part of the lobby that like normies can go in, right? Like the visitor's place. So yeah, people said it smelled really bad. I don't really remember that particularly. It was kind of I think it was a relatively rough prison. Like I was like, there weren't a lot of white guys there, and I mean, I did well myself just because like, I can talk to people and I'm charismatic but it was like, I could see things. I know that it's a really hard, environment for, but also I was in federal holding, which is probably better conditions than, like the city and county like charged people. So there's that. But it was a bad, depressing prison. It was like there weren't any windows. It was very, very miserable, very, very miserable. It was definitely worse than most of them, I'd say. I've been in a lot of correctional facilities by now.
Yeah.
So
So you
so
weren't able to leave New Jersey even though you were bailed out. So how did that work? Like were you just on your own? You had to like find a place to stay at while you awaited sentencing or something? That's
yeah,
kind of
well,
weird.
it wasn't just sentencing. I had to wait in New Jersey, and um, thank God, my friend helped me get my bail conditions extended to New York as well, so I could travel to New York during the daytime,
Okay.
and go to bars there. If it weren't for that, I would have probably killed myself. How
Yeah.
am I supposed to live without like a good Ramos fizz or a
Hmm.
penicillin? Like if I don't have cocktails, then there's a problem, and there's just not a single bar worth of shit in all of New Jersey somehow. Like, but but yeah, I stayed in Jersey City and
That
Newark
sucks.
I lived there for quite a while. Not Newark, but like what's a little bit north of Newark? I forget. Like I don't really remember the geography that well of New Jersey. I just tried to get out of it.
Hmm.
Spend as many hours not in New Jersey as possible.
Yep.
That was my thing for years. For the years I awaited trial, it was not a good place.
Yeah, New Jersey
You
might
know.
be enough of a prison in its own to you might not even have to be in a correctional facility in New Jersey to really get the prison experience. They could have just confined you to New Jersey itself and let
Yeah.
you wander in the panopticon hellscape that New Jersey is and make you drink their tap water, and that probably would have done
Yeah.
more.
Yeah, I mean it's just as bad. I'd say that the conditions you endure while you're on bail are actually worse than prison. Like I would rather be in prison. They make it so you'd rather be in prison, right? Because they want you to like break and plea out, right? And I had a really important case to fight because Lance Moore had just been charged. This the circumstances were just so close in that it was the same prosecutor, I think it was the same judge. It was the same U.S. Attorney's Office, and it was the same charges. He'd access to public web server, and the alleged victim was AT&T. And Lance Moore basically had my exact same case, and he killed himself. He was just like, fuck. He just killed himself. He couldn't bear, what they were doing to his life. So there was a lot of talk in public of also Aaron Schwartz's case was happening at the same time. And I found it interesting that people would talk about Aaron Schwartz and not talk about Lance Moore. But there was a lot of people just like getting their life ruined and offing themselves because of what the feds were doing, who hadn't committed a crime, right? Like these people, Aaron Swartz arguably did commit a crime, but not much of a crime. It should have been like a 1 year misdemeanor or something. And Lance Moore was guiltless, like he did nothing wrong. And these people are dead, right? There's corpses there, so it's and so somebody kind of had to like just take the hit and be like, I'm not gonna give up. I'm not gonna let the feds like have an easy ride, right? I'm gonna make it so at least they're embarrassed and there's there's something that at least costs them time, right? And I'll just cast myself into the mouth of the beast and let him chew on me. It's like let's see who breaks first. And I'm kind of a madman, and I've got nothing to lose, and I don't fear prison, but I will say that living on bail is worse than jail any day of the week.
So is that when you decided to, after the correctional facility business, did you then move out of the country from that, or what led you to your current location? How did all of that work?
Well, there's a long break there. I mean,
So,
I waited 2 years. I went to trial. I had my trial. I went to prison. I was remanded into custody at sentencing immediately,
oh,
which is rare. It's usually they let you report to prison, but I don't think the judge particularly appreciated my attitude towards her. She was she was very urban, let's say, and then after sentencing, I waited 14 more months in prison, and then my appeal went through, and they vacate the decision, and then I planned at that point. I was like, I'm tired of being in America's reach, and I'm tired of the
Mm-hmm.
velocity of my life at this point. I'd been in the country, and my friends who are kind of, a bunch of them helped me through this, but years prior they were like, you should just leave. Like way before I got indicted, they were like, you should leave the United States, because if you stay here, they're gonna just like put you in prison. There were lots of people that were like, you should not be within the United States. They're gonna make stuff up and put you in prison. And I was like, what? I'm an American. I have First Amendment rights. I'm a good tax-paying citizen. I don't commit crime, right? Like I was like telling these people who perfectly told me how the world worked, right? who are very much more aware of it than me. And I of course, it's the American system of indoctrination is extremely powerful, and there's nobody that's more tyrannized than the person that thinks absolutely that they live in the freest country in the world, when it turns out that's not really the case, right? And it's in fact the least free country, because if you go to a dictatorship, everything that you can't do is explicitly enumerated. And when you have to explicitly enumerate everything that people can't do, it's usually a pretty small list. The primary thing is you can't criticize the government, but you can do everything else to a greater degree. You can conduct business way easier in any other country in the world than the United States. So, the U.S. is such a tyranny precisely because you can live in it, and you're convinced that you have rights, and you're convinced that the Constitution means something, and the common law heritage means something, but it doesn't. It's a totally mercenary system, and there's very little freedom there. There's the lowest amount of freedom in the United States of any country I've ever been. It's just absolutely insane that people go around saying that it's a free country.
yeah.
It turns out that that's a euphemism for tyranny. That's why we have to go spread freedom and democracy with bombs all over the world.
Yeah, the illusion of freedom and constitutional rights is probably the word you used, indoctrination. These public schools I would consider indoctrination camps, where you're pledging allegiance to the flag that controls your whole life and builds this invisible panopticon around you. And it's this panopticon that you live in for your entire life, that you don't see the steel bars that are right in front of your face until you try to take one step, and then you hit the glass wall that you never saw, and
Yeah.
you hit your head real hard into that, and you end up in a position pretty similar to yours. I think that's a really salient point on what you were saying about kind of dictatorships, at least We talked about this on some other episodes that dictatorships, at least, they don't lie about their tyranny. And their tyranny, in quotes, is usually, as you put it, less bad than that of America's. But almost the bigger problem than the lack of rights that you have as an American citizen is the fact that you're lied to about them, and the fact that you're given the illusion of freedom, just like in the market where you have the illusion of free choice in what you do while everything is controlled by five or so corporations. It's an illusion of freedom where you have this constitution and these amendments that you learn as a kid, but they're really not out there to protect you, the taxpayer, who puts up this whole system for the government to prosecute you in. I don't know if you'd agree with that.
Yeah, the Philip K. Dick and the Discordians, they called it the Black Iron Prison.
Oh,
You know,
yes.
yeah. So the prison that's there, but you know it's not physically there. It's the most important one to break people out of, no doubt.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. We live in Philip K. Dick's Black Iron Prison 100%. If you're an American, I would take Weeve's path and get out of here while you can before they extend
It's too
this.
late. All the flights are closed.
I was just going to say the coronavirus is... Yeah, coronavirus has been the vector that's going to keep everyone here forever, and your rights are going to be stripped away slowly, one at a time.
Yeah, they're really going after people now. You know, it's gonna be crazy. They're gonna have, you know, the WHO is now talking about being able to come into your house and take your kids, right? Don't you want to put your kids next to Bill Gates, right? Like, don't you want these good people from the WHO and, you know, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to have access to your kids? You know, it's just it's a dark time in the world. You know, it's like, and it's just people don't seem to look at reality and see what it is, you know, because they're afraid of the flu. Like, this is like the gayest fucking way that anything could be implemented. Like, you know, we all like knew something like this was coming, but the fact that they did it because people are afraid of the flu is like is the fucking the lamest fucking way that I could possibly see all this stuff happening. Like, I don't know, man. I don't know.
They
I can't
did
believe
this
it all.
with Event 201 is exactly the people you're naming, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the WHO, along with Johns Hopkins University. Are you familiar with Event 201?
I am familiar with Event 201.
And this was like a practice run for, okay, how badly are we going to fuck people by releasing
actually had
this?
a war game, a big. Yeah, they did a big series of plans. If I quote, a novel zoonotic coronavirus appeared that would need cooperation of all global authorities to manage, you know, and lo and behold, it appears, and it not only appears, it appears in China, which is like very, very conveniently timed, given that color revolution in Hong Kong had just fizzled out, right? So, so it's yeah, I'm quite familiar with the Event 201 games that they held, and you know, and now they get to just come in your house and take your kids or take you and put you in a quarantine facility and let a bunch of, you know, people chip you or something. Who knows how far it's going to go. You know, there's going to be serious shortages of food, probably. Who knows? Like, it could just be like a Holodomor thing. We don't know at this point how bad it's going to get, but you know, it's just the flu, bro.
It's just the flu.
It's the fucking flu, you know. Like, Well, it just goes to show how powerful the media is and what kind of influence they have on people's lives. Is that they've transformed our whole society, and they've locked us in prisons of our own house. They've put us all under house arrest on the basis of we have to be afraid of the flu. The most ridiculous thing that I could possibly imagine.
I saw you were tweeting predictions about how they're like conditioning everyone with how it's just perfect conditions for a possible war. Do you have any thoughts on that
Oh
still?
yeah,
Or
World War III predictions.
I mean, this could go either way, right? Like, one, the economy is just ruined, right? Like,
yeah.
30% of the U.S. economy is gone, according to Moody's, and it's probably likely more. It's probably about half the economy. Like, the only reason it's only 30% now is like we haven't opened things back up, right? So we don't even know fully what's shut down, right? But it's at least like what we know today is that 30% of the economy has been vaporized, right? And the supply chain issues right now, like right now, the nation's largest pork processor just shut down, and like they can't if they can't process the pigs, then you have what's happening in a lot of agricultural industries right now, and that you have the initial producers have to shut down. Like right now, people are dumping milk because the price of milk has gone so low that it's not profitable to get it to the store, so they just dump the milk. And there's tons of onions rotting in fields because there's no restaurants buying produce, right? And so the produce producers, they have this gigantic surplus, and they just leave it to rot where it is, and it never gets shipped anywhere. So this is indicative of the fact that how people eat has changed, right? Like right now they're buying flour, they're buying yeast, they're buying these kind of essentials that you would like stick in your pantry and kind of just you bake some bread every day or something, right? But there's not enough wheat calories in the U.S. You can't just plant one crop for one. Like you can't put everything. You can't put our whole nation. You can't make it dependent on wheat, right? So this is not sustainable. But there's just, even if people could eat just wheat, there's not enough wheat infrastructure to feed everybody off of wheat forever. We have grain silos full of wheat, right? And right now we are eating out of those long-term grain silos that are full of the surplus wheat that's kind of been stockpiled. But eventually that runs out, and if during the interim, while that's being run out, everybody else that makes all the other food shuts down. Like at the end of that, there's some real fucking problems, because we can't all eat bread every single fucking day because there aren't enough wheat fields to do that. That's just a basic mathematical fact. There's all sorts of crops that couldn't entirely sustain the U.S. population. We had a very varied diet. So who knows what's going to happen? It's not pretty to think about. So it could be a Holodomor situation. But on the other hand, it could be us prepping for a global war, because we are now in numbers that look worse than the Great Depression. And what pulled us out of the Great Depression? It was World War II, right? It was a big fucking war that everybody got in on. And we are kind of moving in the direction where everybody's just kind of unemployed, right? And they're stuck in their houses, and it would be pretty easy to get, young men to agree to a draft under these conditions, right? At least you get to.
This part has been redacted. You can continue it right now.
At least you get to go, pursue war brides. There we go. So yeah, we're in that kind of situation where they could get people to comply with almost anything in about 8 months, right? Like people will say, okay, what do you want to do? And they're really not gonna have any choice, right? If we say go fight a war, what are they gonna do? What are they gonna do? And of course, the economy is kind of being re-architected to be used to the executive, the commander in chief, ordering her around and say, "You make this, you make this." That we're already invoking the Defense Production Act, and we don't even have a global war.
Hmm.
So it does look like that a giant world war is on the horizon. It would take a lot. I think we want to get to provoke China into attacking us. There's a lot of talk of canceling the debt to China, but I don't think that's enough. I think that we'd also have to take their assets, and it would have to be kind of a global effort. I think it would take multiple nations working in concert to cancel debt and take Chinese assets. Using the pretext of, well, we got really afraid of the flu, so you lose trillions of dollars, lol, and that would put China in a position where they would have to attack somebody, right? They have to do something. They can't just tell their people that, oh yeah, all those decades of laboring in sweatshops, and what do you get out of it? Well, it turns out like we lost all the money because people were afraid of the flu. They can't say that to their guys, right? So then it would be China probably attacking somebody, and then it would create a Pearl Harbor moment, and we could go to war with China. And so it's possible. It's all possible. I'm kind of a moron. I don't consider myself especially smart. So when I'm asked to speculate on things, because even though I make a living off of speculation, right? Like I still feel like it should it shouldn't be possible. Like I don't know anything special. It seems strange
You
that
did
that
some good speculation on cryptocurrency back in the
I was
early
just gonna
days.
go there.
Yeah, John, maybe you could ask this one. What do you think about that, John?
I mean, it's not really a question. I was just gonna kind of like go on top of that. Like, do you have any future speculations on crypto? Because I mean, obviously something would happen with the global economy vanishing and, war and all that. I'm sure that would be kind of a game changer for like cryptocurrencies in general, and I guess more specifically like Monero and other privacy based shit. Do you have any thoughts, or not really predictions, but just thoughts, I guess, on that?
Yeah, with what's going on now, I feel so like I made some good calls this year, and I'm probably one of the only people whose crypto positions are in the black all the way through to today with the COVID stuff, right? Like, if you invested in almost anything in any market, crypto, equities, whatever, like
Hmm.
you're probably in the red, but I'm not. And I called it pretty publicly, that I told people to buy Tezos, and Tezos did really well. It did lose because of the coronavirus hysteria, but I told people to buy it 150, and it went up to 330, and now it's at like $2 or something as of a couple days ago. I don't keep a daily watch on it, but that my position has gained 33%, and in this market, right, is not I'm not unhappy over that time span, and I'm not I but point being, despite all this, right, despite the fact that, like, I've had a pretty good idea of what's going on in crypto, um, better than some people at least. I don't lose a lot of money.
Hmm.
Um, I I also think that the macroeconomic situation is like way bigger than anything that's going on in crypto, right? Like, and crypto has, just in general, kind of lost value in this economy because it is basically an equity.
Hmm.
Um, it's an equity because when you buy Bitcoin, you're not just buying Bitcoin, you're buying a speculative interest in the future potential economy of Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
And if people are deleveraging and they're selling assets to meet margin calls, like, Bitcoin goes down with everything else. If and a big market crash, and Bitcoin goes down with so I don't know. I literally don't know, and the my ability to understand what's going to go on in this kind of situation, like we're looking at numbers that are unprecedented, right? Like right now on paper, going to be worse than the Great Depression. That is, at least by a lot of core indicators. Maybe we're going to open things up at the end of April and everything's just going to magically get better, right? Like we're going to click our heels together and just there's no place like 2019, it's all going to be better, I that could be it, right? That could be what happens. I have no ability to gauge what the fuck is happening in this whole situation, and I think that anybody that's talking with certainty right now is like
bullshit.
Is insane, right? Maybe like some of them will end up right,
Yeah.
maybe some of them will be spot on, but I don't think anybody really knows. And things are almost certainly going to be very bad. Anything that behaves like an equity when things are bad is not necessarily a great asset to have. I'm just thankful that I haven't lost my shirt. I've been very lucky. Most of my gains are luck in life. I'm not gonna fool myself into thinking I'm some kind of genius. I really think that my faith in the gods, and they bless me, and that's all that things are. Is, without gods, men are nothing. And I don't have any particular degree of insight or intellect. I've been really, really lucky, and I'm thankful for that luck.
That's something that I fell victim to was what you said about it being an equity and rather than an inverse asset. I figured, okay, so this was something conceived of during the 2008 financial crisis, right? Chancellor on the brink of bailout, Bitcoin. So what are we betting against? We're betting against the stock market. So, well, if coronavirus is going to kill the stock market, then I might as well put a bunch of money into Bitcoin, right? And it turns out, no, you fucking retard, Warren. People need to have their liquid assets in order to buy Bitcoin. So you can't be betting against the stock market simultaneously while rooting for Bitcoin, because it allows you have to have liquidity to buy Bitcoin. You have to have US dollars to buy Bitcoin. And if your US dollars are worth nothing, then you no longer have any value to put into Bitcoin and raise the price of any altcoin, any cryptocurrency, any neo economy of the future needs to be bought, at least in this stage, with a US dollar or whatever your country's dollar is. And if you're betting against the entire system that props up your dollar, then you need that to succeed in order for your future asset, in this case we're talking about crypto, your cryptocurrency, to succeed. And so when stonks went red line down, the Bitcoin followed, because all these institutional investors, right? Everyone talks about, oh, the institutional money that'll be coming. It's coming one day. It's gonna get there. It turns out, no, these are stock traders, and they're going to sell all at the same time. They're going to dump, and that was something that I fell quite idiotically victim to. Should have had hindsight's 2020, but yeah, it was not the brightest in that situation. So I guess my question to you would be, if you're a crypto holder, are you betting against the stock market, or do you need the stock market and the system of finance to be able to succeed in order to go on talking about crypto and making that succeed too? Do they need to go together hand in hand? Does the economy need to be good in order for crypto to be good, or can the economy be bad and then crypto does even better? Which was the latter was my understanding.
Okay, well here's the thing. Firstly, I don't think that buying and holding crypto is necessarily the best way to make money in crypto. I mean, it's clear that like you're never going to see the kind of returns in crypto that were there before, right?
Yeah.
It's already worth too much, right? So but there's still many, many billionaires to be minted in crypto because the crypto allows people to conduct transactions that people can't reverse, and that's something that that's the selling point of Bitcoin, right? That's the thing that you can do with Bitcoin that has never been actually in existence throughout all of history as a way to transfer internationally some kind of store of value that couldn't be nullified by a third party. So, there's lots of things that have some kind of regulatory like friction to resolving a transaction. For example, in a lot of states, you need to present ID, to sell catalytic converters, and there are limits on the number of catalytic converters you can sell before you get like law enforcement scrutiny, right? So, like car parts, for example, are a intensely regulated market, you know, and there are it's a market that hasn't found a like a kind of centralized point of liquidity where there's a single marketplace for car parts that you don't need to have ID or like tie anything to a bank account. Like there's just no way for some little urban youth who saws off catalytic converters to get a fair market value price for his ill-gotten wares. So there's still lots of places that there's still lots of types of transactions in our society. Raw milk is another one, right? Like the federal authorities raid dairies with SWAT teams on a regular basis.
Right.
Sometimes just off the accusation that they've been selling cheese that's the exact way that our ancestors ate it for like thousands of years. This is something that gets guns pointed at people. So there's friction in these kinds of transactions, and people could make money by starting businesses that serve these kinds of markets via cryptocurrency. There's still billionaires to be minted in these kind of spaces. So I'm not. I'm kind of ride or die on cryptocurrency because I'm not really like well banked, and I can't trust financial institutions as a political dissident. But that doesn't mean that I'm running around generally. I mean, I did run around when around December of last year telling people to buy Tezos, but generally more often than not, I'm not like you need to buy Bitcoin, right? Like generally
Right.
what I tell
Right.
people is you need to find a way to participate in the cryptocurrency economy and get crypto kind of a matter of course of doing business, but not buy and hold.
So that's interesting. That, um, yeah, I guess I don't want to go too much into crypto because you kind of have already made your money and left. But I do think you brought up an interesting point that as an unregulated asset that is, although currently under the guise of SEC regulations here in America, as a political dissident, when you're banned from SWIFT payments and orthodox banking platforms, that's kind of your last lamb. Is crypto for you something that you're heavily relying on? Is that something that you need in order to succeed? Being that you're banned from Swift payments and things like that, or is there
Oh,
alternative means of communicating money?
I would be dead without Bitcoin, right? Like I would literally be dead. Like I would be starving and I would have died in a Slavic winter. without it. Like that's just kind of a fact. It's like none of what I do is possible. My life is not possible without Bitcoin. I owe Satoshi my life, my whole fucking life.
That's good to hear that Satoshi has saved your life. I'm actually kind of curious now about your predicament in wherever it is in the Slavic nations that you're living at now. Has I know that there were issues with Moldova coming in and gunfire being heard outside of your window and water supply being cut off. Are things being resolved in your living predicament, or are things still kind of harsh? Could you fill the listeners in on what's kind of been going on with your recent personal means of survival?
Yeah, I live in the PMR. It's a breakaway region. It's on the border of Moldova and Ukraine, and internationally it's considered Moldova. And it's just really hard here in this giant fucking flu hoax because they have cut off the borders. Both Moldova and Ukraine have completely closed their borders. So there's like no goods getting in. There's not like a big effort to quarantine people here, but it doesn't matter because like everything's closing down because they don't have more products to sell. And it's very like the chance of bad things happening is just really, really, really high. There's basic failures of utilities all the time now, and it's getting worse, and it's not good. It's not good. But I obviously couldn't survive here if it weren't for crypto. Like if I was bound to the local economy, I don't know what I'd be qualified to do. I can't. My Russian is very, very bad. I'm not particularly good at learning languages.
Are you able to
And
talk about your relationships with certain high up people in the area you're living in with your crypto advice? I remember you chatting about that recently
no,
with
no,
me.
I can't talk about
Okay,
like
we
anything related.
we will refrain from that. But something different that I was reminded of when you bring up the Corona hoax is an old video. I used to really like your YouTube channel before it was canned, uh, and you had some really funny and also at the same time insightful videos on there. And when you call the Corona a hoax, which I also subscribe to that ideology, it reminds me of a video that you put out called "Nukes Are a Lie and You Have Autism," uh, which still makes me laugh to this day. But without getting into too much of the reasons on why the semantics of why nukes are a lie, do you think that the coronavirus is similarly? There could be a new video. Coronavirus is a lie, and you have autism. What do you think of it as a hoax in this sense?
I mean, I mean, I don't even know. Like, I don't even know how far this has gone, right? Like, at least with nuclear weapons, there's like some kind of, you know, there's videos of explosions, right? But like, there was just a headline that ran today that I saw on the Daily Stormer. Anglin was picking it apart, and that it was a headline that said morgues run out of body bags, right? Something like that, right? And of course, a headline like that like makes people think of every pandemic movie that they've ever watched, right? And there's just like millions of corpses, right? But it wasn't that. It's that China makes the body bags, and they just start shipping more from China, right? Like, there's no like um, there's no running out of body bags because there's extra bodies. In fact, there's less bodies because people are locked inside their houses. They're not having car accidents. Um, yeah, but and there's a bunch of people like hysterically posting this all over Reddit who aren't reading the article, right? And they're just reacting to the headline. Like it's just definitely with what's happening in Iceland, that that like the numbers are in. We know how lethal this thing is now, right? Like Iceland tested 10% of its population at random, and they found that most of the people with the virus, like slightly over half, don't show any symptoms at all, right? They don't even get the flu. They don't even get the flu if they have the virus. And there's 7 deaths, and there's a fatality rate of like a fraction of a percent. I think it's like, 0.004 is what the fatality rate. Like it's
wow.
like nobody is dying from this. It's insane, but like we all have to shut down the whole world because
Yeah,
of the
you have
flu,
to
because people are
quarantine.
afraid
You have
of
to get the
getting flu.
microchip. You have to stay inside. They're using this to build and officiate the Panopticon, and I guess
Yeah.
that makes
And
me
and while
wonder.
they're
Oh, what were you saying?
at it, Bill Gates is gonna get Jeffrey Epstein associate Bill Gates is gonna come into your house and take your kids too with the WHO.
Yeah, that you saying that reminded me of something my girlfriend's dad told me the other day, yesterday actually, is that California Governor Gavin Newsom is asking LA residents to spy on their neighbors, and if they break social protocol, to report them to the state authorities, and you will receive an award for like a bounty for reporting your neighbors, which is kind of the spirit that we're all spying on each other. We're all watching each other for these small breaks in social law. And that itself is quite a scary thing. And I'm wondering, do you see any return to normalcy? Do you see the government opening things back up after this? Or I'm not asking you to kind of peer into your crystal ball, because I know none of us actually have one, but you're a wise man, and I want to know what your thoughts are on a return to normalcy, and if things are going to just magically go back to normal, go back to the things that we were doing. We're going to the parks and the beaches, or if this is the start of a new world order and that things are going to continue to be locked down even further. Your kids are going to be living with Bill Gates, and yeah, what do you think about that? Do you think there's any going back, or do you think we're just going to move forward into full tyranny? We've
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's a hard call. I think that people are going to be outraged, right? If they wake up and they realize that everything has been shut down because of the flu, people are going to be quite mad. you know, like so it's quite a strange situation where there is a huge push, right? Like a lot of people are pushing to just keep this charade going on indefinitely, because they've kind of staked their whole lives and careers on the fact that this is the deadliest, this is the pandemic we needed to shut down society for. And and even if it weren't like some kind of pre-planned event, right? Once you do that, right, like you sort of like you've put it all on black, right? Like there's no going back from pushing that decision. And so there's these people that are saying that, well, we have to lock down the country for 18 months. Like there's people that are in high levels of government that are saying that right now, right? And I don't think those kinds of numbers, are rooted anywhere in knowledge, right? Like there's no person that honestly believes that we need to lock down the country for 18 months, even if you believe coronavirus is really that bad, right? If you think this thing really is this terrible thing, like you don't know, like 18 months is a made up number, right? It's a long number that's just made up, so it's clear that like they just want to keep the country closed while they figure out what to do, or they want to keep the country closed as long as possible so that they can like turn it into a Holodomor scenario and just kill everybody, starve them out, make the food supply run dry.
And
So
that timeline goes perfectly with, even though he's kind of a bit of a kooky man, David Icke, who would talk about Agenda 21, and that the UN in 2021, this has been a long time conspiracy, that there would be a mass culling of the population so that the elites could have the ripes for their picking. And it seems like the timeline is actually adding up here, that by 2021 there will be a Holodomor type scenario where we end up stuck in a panopticon where half your or all of your relatives are dead and possibly you, and there's no food, and we're serving and kissing the feet of the elites for one more pour of porridge. That's what it seems like things are coming to. I don't know if you'd agree with me on the Agenda 21 thing, but I always thought of it as kind of too crazy. But now after this, the timeline seems to be quite accurate. And with the WHO, I think with Agenda 21, it was all about the UN, but I think that could be substituted for the WHO, and that seems to be what is going to happen here, and that seems to be what is happening.
Yeah, it could be. It could be. Or they could just send everybody to war, right? Or they might just, open the country back up and let people fucking starve and like try to search for jobs, and it might just be a long stagnant decline for a while. Who knows? Who knows? I don't know. I don't know. But you should definitely have a lot of food and ammunition. That seems to be sensible things to have for sure.
Yeah, things might go full helter-skelter in a moment here. I wanted to talk about a topic you wanted to talk about, German idealism. So did Hegel have it wrong? Did Fichte have it wrong? And Herder and Hamann? What's the true post-Kantian ideology here, with pivoting away from coronavirus into 18th century philosophy? I know that's a sharp turn, but
I think here's what I think about it. Is that whole group of people, there was an esoteric side, which was German idealism, and then there was an exoteric side, which was Bildung. The philosophy of Bildung is something that Hegel was very invested in, and of course Goethe, he made Bildung this kind of sensational thing that was very popular in Germany, and then was kind of transplanted to the Anglo world by Thomas Carlyle. He translated Goethe's novels into English, and Carlyle said, "Put down thy Byron, pick up thy Goethe." And I did
not know that Carlyle was the one to translate Goethe. That's interesting. I'm sorry, continue.
Yeah.
I just thought that, wow, I never knew that.
Yeah, and I want to convince people to do the opposite. And here's my fundamental worldview: as it's classical in the sense that I define virtue as either strength in some kind of form. Physical strength is obviously something that's virtuous. But strength of will or strength of resolve is also very important. And the primary thing that defines somebody, and according to the classical worldview, the worldview before the Enlightenment, is their deeds, right? Like talk is cheap is my philosophy. And if you look at Kant, for example, Kant, he was kind of a loser, and that he never left his neighborhood, basically. Like he never married, he never had children. He seemed to be involved with his nephews, like he spent on his male nephews, like some people would, spend on their girlfriends or on women. He allegedly, after being questioned much, he found a woman and he proposed to her by letter after she left town, and that was, he went around saying basically, "Oh, I missed out on the potential love of my life who I didn't even say anything to." It's just a weird situation, right? You have these kind of Fichte, of course, also, wasn't really a family man. Neither was Schopenhauer, who was Kant's contemporary. Schopenhauer and indeed went even farther, and then he wrote a brief section on the potential social benefits of pederasty, which I find very intriguing.
Yeah, it's disturbing.
Yeah, yeah, and he prefixes it by, well, I'm not a pedophile, but
But
here's how pedophile could be good in some ways. There might be bad parts about it, but think of all the good things that we could get out of it, right? It's very Reddit libertarian.
I was gonna say patient zero libertarian.
So you have a bunch of childless single guys that seem to be fixated on the integration of society in the kind of post-Enlightenment view, because Bildung is self-cultivation, and it's naturally a post-Enlightenment philosophy, because if it's yourself you're cultivating, then it's in the framework of post-Enlightenment liberty, right? And some of the things that Jörg Hegel said on this are very kind of pointing towards Illuminism, right? And that Bildung required an alienation from your natural consciousness. That this kind of alienation was the only way that you could achieve proper self-cultivation. And when Hegel said, or when Carlyle said, "Put down thy Byron, pick up thy Goethe," it's almost it's almost a mirror image of the things that were being presented in Wilhelm Meister's Apprenticeship, the Goethe novel.
Right.
Because Werner says to the protagonist in that, he tells him to throw his book of poetry into the fire. And so you have something that's happening in this novel where the protagonist is being encouraged to abandon the muses and commit himself to the society of the tower. And the society of the tower that is presented in that novel looks like this kind of thing that was happening in 18th century Germany. The Freemasons were kind of integrating these methods of social control, and that they were making confessors out of people and encouraging them to spy on one another, and they were trying to kind of eliminate their competition in this space, and that also the Jesuits would do that, and Adam Weishaupt's Illuminati was operating in Germany at that particular moment. So there were all these kinds of secret societies that engaged in these kind of occult rituals. You have these people in these secret societies, and these secret societies are formed around occult rituals that are geared towards social control.
Right.
And what's interesting is that this is reflected in Goethe's novel, as that he is presenting this situation where somebody has to throw their love of poetry away because they need to commit themselves to the society of the tower. And the society of the tower, as it's presented, is comprised of initiates, and they have ceremonies. It's very much mirrors the kind of thing that was going on in Germany. at this particular moment, at this particular time. So the fact of Bildung was the idea that people should essentially clean their room and wash their penis. It was the Jordan Peterson of its time, because the purpose, according to all the groups of people within the German way of thought at the time, was that people should be governed by themselves, right? That there shouldn't be external forces to infringe upon their liberties, and that the best way to control people within this space were societies that would have sway and collect information on them, so that rather than have a formal code where rights and wrongs are enumerated clearly, and if the population doesn't like it, they can, reject it, which is, how the world was governed for a very long time. We would have massive fabrics of institutional elites that would comprise the upper levels of society in education and governance and law, and they would conspire against anybody that they saw as a threat, and they would do it by their network of informants and their ability to get people to engage in self-destructive behaviors. I believe that this is absolutely tyrannical. And if there was ever a time and place to tell people to like that they had an obligation, a moral obligation to do something about the people in charge, right? To do something to just make this whole fucking charade stop. Like, it was that place at that time, right? That was the most important time to tell people something other than clean their room and wash their penis. Right? Like that, this was the time to do it. We had this very narrow window where we could have diverted civilization from this path of these secret societies engaging in these kinds of controls rooted in a tyrannical level of social fabric of informants and confessors, and gathering data on people and getting people involved in weird rituals, right? And instead, there's a group of people that did two things. They told people, just improve yourself and serve the people in charge. That was the whole point of Bildung. That was the whole message of it, is that you should integrate yourself with the society, abandon your natural consciousness. If you have anything that in your heart that feels that this is wrong, you need to get rid of that, right? And the moral frameworks that were being established on the other end of it, the ethical frameworks, because this is really a society without morality, they were very, very somebody might take a look at Kant and they might think that he's not a relativistic thinker at all, right? But the end result of Kant is the ultimate form of moral relativism, because first, Kant doesn't convey obligations on anybody. His ethics are weak, and that they're obsessively legalistic. That you'll get tied down in Kant's form of analysis by his wizardry at breaking down situations obsessively and coming to these conclusions, which might not be wrong on paper, but it's like if you have to act in the weakest way possible in accordance with the most universal maxims, what the kind of life that you're going to live is be just like Kant, and that you're not really going to do much, right? You're going to accomplish very little, and you're going to wander around your small part of the world, and you're never ever going to do anything that might hurt the establishment that runs it all, right? Like you're gonna do very, very little. And I'd like to contrast this with Byron, because Carlyle is the guy that spread this in the Anglo world, and he was specifically telling people to be like the characters in Goethe's novels, or even Goethe himself, or the German idealists, and he was implying that being like Byron was bad. And you know how Byron died? A miserable way.
How did he die?
So Byron spent his remaining fortune. He had probably a couple $1 million in terms of personal wealth accrued at the end of his life. He was a multimillionaire, and he spent his final moments outfitting the Greek navy and fighting with the Greeks to liberate their country from the Ottoman yoke, right? And like this is a man that actually died heroically, saving his fellow Europeans from the tyranny of Turkish Muslims, right? Like, he put his life on the line, he put his fortune on the line, he gave everything that he had, his health, his life, his fortune, to help save his own people, his own continent, from hostile foreign invaders. Like that, like there is nobody that I can think of that lived that lived past 1700, 1600, that died as gloriously as Lord Byron. Who can say that they lived as good of a life as Byron? He also fought. Like, he fought on the streets. Like, he was by the purses that Byron fought for at the time. He was like, the would be the upper tier of boxers today. He was so he lived a life of struggle, and he lived a life of he lived a life where he left a legacy, and he shook history in a way that was beneficial to people. And that kind of heroism is just, it's in short supply, and we are coming to this point in history where, I think we all know what's going on, right? It's like, look around us, right? The Epstein's associates have us locked in our houses, afraid of the flu. We have them about to start trying to kidnap kids from people's houses. And if there were ever a time and ever a place to not tell people to clean their room and wash their penis, like if there were ever a time and place to tell people, hey, we need to do something, right? Something has to be done about the people in charge. I'd say that, like, we might be at that crossroads, right? Like, it might be the kind of time and the kind of place where we need to tell people that something has to be done. And it's just, it's also tiresome.
Yeah, and I guess that's where I don't want to name him, but my past co-host comes into conflict with Bap, and why Bap doesn't like him is because Goethe ultimately, while a Renaissance man of sorts, a painter and a poet, and he wrote Faust and whatnot, his novels never came to any resolute. They never came to any resolve. They Sorrows of Young Werther ends with poor Werther shooting himself in the head over a broad, and I mean, that's most of the themes of Goethe's novels, is being a neat and an incel and giving no kind of way out of that, no Nietzschean escape. And I know you're a big proponent of kind of populism and seeing that as the way politically forward. I wonder, do you align with Bap's kind of neo-philosophy at all in his terms of bettering yourself? It sounds a lot like it has a lot in common with Bildung and Byron in his terms of, at least with Byron going out in his heroic death. That reminds me a lot of in Bronze Age Mindset, telling you to join an armed force, infiltrate the services that are already existing, and do something heroic, do something like a pirate, What do you think about that, about BAP and Bronze Age mindset in terms of a neo Byron?
I really like BAP. I'd say that absolutely what BAP is encouraging people to do is engage in piracy, and I think that's a viable strategy. I don't think it's the right strategy, but I think it's better than the kind of Jordan Peterson thing where you
Yeah.
just kind of retreat from the world and tend to your own affairs. It didn't seem to work for Jordan Peterson, and now that he's overdosed on Xanax, and you know.
And his daughter is
can't
on OnlyFans.
Yeah, his daughter's a giant whore, and
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. I mean, he lived in a filthy house and had a big whore of a daughter, and eventually those pills are gonna start looking pretty good. It's but I think that the BAP has a viable strategy, and at least it doesn't. If everybody acts like that, then at least the situation, like the if everybody acts like BAP suggests, then at least things are going to collapse faster, right? If you just don't kind of give anything to the system and try to pull what you can out of it, and just and also being strong and looking good is an inherent virtue, right?
Right,
It's, we have redefined in the modern era, especially post-Christianity, the meaning of virtue. But to the Romans, like to all of classical civilization, but the Romans had virtus was like it was literally, virtue to them was physical strength. It was synonymous with physical strength and health, right? And the appearance of such, and lack of virtue was correlated with sickness and weakness. So these are virtues in the classical sense, and trying to extract value from the system without giving back in, and also subversion of the military is a very effective strategy, actually, because it's lots of things happen by military coup. I'm not opposed to this method at all. But the thing about this is, if you really want to do a military coup, you need to stay away from anything remotely fringe, because even if you are found to buy BAP's book, right? Even if they know that you've read BAP's book, you might be kept out of the upper ranks of the military. Like, you might not be allowed near that lever, right? Like, you have to be able to maintain the appearance of normalcy for so long to get to the position where you can actually command people to break bad and shake the world, right? But military coup is a viable strategy, historically it's very common for military coup to resolve in a way that's favorable for the people that throw it. So it's not bad to do that, right? And it's also not bad to pursue democratic consensus. Lots of people were elected, right? Look at the amount of elections that had to be won for, say, Hitler to get to a seat of power, right? He had to have the whole, the majority of the Reichstag, the German parliament. He had to get them to appoint him chancellor. He had to get them to pass the Enabling Act to remove the limits on his power, right? That requires a lot of seats filled, And democracy and military coup are the two most common ways that guys really turn things around, right? If you can convince people to vote for you and give you the power, that's great. If you can just take it, and make everybody do what you say at sword point, that's also great, And I'd say there's probably only one other way to go, and that's and it's a rare thing, but I think it's increasingly likely that it might come through, and that there's the Meiji Restoration in Japan happened because the Choshu and the Satsuma domains, they got modern weaponry when everybody had kind of garbage stuff. Like, they got Mine rifles, they had some Gatling guns, They had Colt revolvers. Like imagine like you have a Gatling gun and like people have like muzzle loaders, right? Like it's kind of like going through a video game on like with God mode on, right? Like it's like this, but this is something that actually happened in history. You know, it's where a small group of a small subsection of people, these very minority players in the whole game, were able to like be like, well, we're going to put the emperor back in charge, and we're going to do it because we have Gatling guns and they don't. And it was just that simple. So if you can get some kind of edge, if you get technology, right, like we might be in a situation where, say, additive manufacturing and image processing, like some kind of deep learning situation. You might be able to make drones do some kind of action in the real world. Say aim something. I don't know. Like you might be in a situation where you can have a kind of strategic advantage that's not symmetric. And by not symmetric, I mean if the government has the same capability, it doesn't do them any good. Like the government can replicate almost any technology, but if you have say if you say have a drone that can differentiate by some kind of demographic indicator, which would probably be a simple project to do in a lot of AI frameworks. And you can produce these things cheap enough, like they can make the same drone, but like that's not the agenda that they want to pursue, right? So you can technology is enabling people to do things that were previously only the realm of nation states, and it's getting better and better and easier to use. I remember how hard it was to do neural network stuff at one point, and now it's like I'm kind of a fucking moron, but like I can do this stuff on my own, and like it used like even 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it was like you'd have to have millions of dollars and like a bunch of postdoc people that specialized in this stuff. But it's like now like some kid can do it with a graphics card. He can train a model in TensorFlow. So we don't know where all these new technologies lead or how they can be applied. It used to be at one point that people had surrounded tanks with infantry that marched alongside it, and then there was this one guy, he said, well, let's just move the tanks forward really fast and put them behind people's lines. Like just like stuff like that, you don't know how something is going to be used generally until somebody uses it better than you. So there's a possibility for technology to kind of asymmetrically benefit small actors against large actors, and that's also a potential viable strategy.
That's really, yeah. I think I see things hopefully moving in that direction. Maybe the Zoomers will rise up and go on Microsoft Azure and learn some deep learning strategies, or perhaps Palmer Luckey's new drone company will do something of the sorts. But we're reaching a pretty good amount of time here that we've been on. I'm wondering, John, do you have any last a last topic you want to bring up? I don't want to use too much of your time, Weev.
Yeah, I'll ask a quick, easy question, Weev. What do you think of Abramovich's latest spirit cooking video?
Oh, the new commercial. Yeah, I saw you retweet something of that sort. What was the deal? Maria Abramovich, the spirit cooking lady, released some kind of, was it with Bill Gates?
I saw the Microsoft commercial.
What's the deal with all of that?
Oh, they're just shouting at you, right? They're just like trying to taunt you. Like it's like obvious, right? Like Epstein associate Bill Gates has his old company do a fucking Pizzagate commercial. It's like they're just telling you what they're about to do. It's like now they're gonna they're gonna go into people's homes and take their kids because of the flu. I wonder what's gonna happen after.
Gonna
You know?
spirit cook them.
So it's a really dark time in the world, and if there were ever a time to be like Byron, it is right now. So please, can I get like 100 Lord Byrons?
Hopefully that's what this episode inspires is
Yeah.
all the listeners. I want you to read Byron and pick up the sword and go join the Greeks and fight off the Ottomans in our Neo times. Don't let them come into your homes and take your children. Don't take the microchip and don't eat the bugs. And stop watching so much news if you're listening to this, because it's not healthy for you. But Weev, I want to thank you so much for coming on. This was a really, really great conversation. We've gone for like, I think almost 2 hours now or something, an hour and a half maybe. So perhaps we could get you back on for a part 2. That would be really good. But I want to thank you so much for coming on and giving us your time.
Absolutely glad to be here. Appreciate you both. Have a good one.
All right. Thank you so much, and have a good rest of your day or night.
You too.